welcome back for episode 2. I am really excited that you have decided to listen to episode 1, or maybe you didn't. That's fine. You get time to go back and do that. But I'm really excited that you decided to listen to episode 1 and you said, you know what? I'm going to give this guy another chance to really prove himself. Maybe you're not saying that. Maybe like, hey, what's this podcast all about? And you go click, and then you're already going like, this guy's just kind of rambling. I don't think I like this. So maybe you've moved on already. If that's the case, sorry to lose you. But if you're still listening, God bless you. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to Trucking Safety with Sam Watts. I am Sam Watts. You are not. Let's keep it that way. Unless your name is... there's like a statistic out there, isn't there? That like statistically, there's like X amount of people that actually do have your actual name. If you know of such a statistic and you want to tell me what it is, cool. I'm sure I know there's other Sam Wattses out there. I don't know if I've ever met one, but I've seen it. So anyways, but I am Sam Watts. I am the host of Trucking Safety, and we are a podcast that brings together trucking and brings together safety, and we show you how the two work together and how the industry should be looking at safety and just everything that the trucking industry should be doing safety-wise. That is what I want to tell you. There's not a ton of people in safety. There's a lot of people that think they know safety, but there's not a ton of them that actually know, safety. And so I'm trying to tell you why we do safety and how to do safety properly and what that means, what that looks like, what we should be doing, and so on and so forth. So that is the purpose of this podcast, is to just kind of enlighten you, kind of maybe crack open some of the secrets that safety people have. Not that we have any secrets. I mean, unless someone has murdered somebody, in which case that would be a secret that will eventually get out. So you should really just turn yourself in. But if you haven't murdered anybody and you are in the safety world, we don't have secrets. And so that's what this podcast is about, is to tell you guys what we do and tell you guys trucking safety, why it's important, how to do it, and all that kind of good stuff. So again, all that to say, thank you for coming back for episode 2 of Trucking Safety. Today, one of the things I want to dive into is abbreviations, or not even necessarily abbreviations, but now my mind's completely blank of what you call those things that you just take the first letter of every word and you make a word out of it. I can't think of it right now. Probably should have written that down. A good podcast host would have written something like that down. It'll come to me. Probably about halfway through this podcast, I will think of it, and then I will yell it out at an inappropriate time, and we'll go from there. But it's more abbreviations, things that we use in the safety world and in the trucking world to condense down words, long words, and make them shorter. So these are just a couple. If you're going to listen to my podcast, if you're going to listen to Trucking Safety with Sam Watts, a lot of these are going to be abbreviations that I will use. And so here's the deal. Whenever you're in an industry and you've been in that industry for a while, a lot of this terminology just is kind of second nature. If you know anything about me and my background, I've been in trucking my whole life, except there was a brief moment where I escaped and I worked in a wood shop. And still have all my fingers. Like I think I said this in the last podcast, but I still have all my fingers. If I ever lose one, I'll let you guys know. But I worked in a wood shop, and there was a guy in there that I worked with who was just a genius when it came to woodworking stuff. He knew everything. He knew the correct glues to use. He knew, if I'm making this certain type of project, what kind of material should I use it? And he could just start rattling off all this stuff, all this knowledge about woodworking. And I would just literally sometimes just ask him questions and just kind of sit back and listen. I learned a ton about woodworking. But like I always told him, I said, hey man, you know more than you even think you do, because it's just you get all this stuff in your head and it just becomes so second nature that you don't even realize what you know. And so I told him, I said, you really sometimes have to slow down for people because we don't know what you know. And I feel like sometimes with trucking, that is kind of the same deal. There's a lot of times we use these abbreviations. I still haven't come up with the word, and I'm sure there's probably some of you who have come up with the word and are yelling at me now through your screen or through your audio speakers, and I apologize. But we have these abbreviations for these words, and we'll rattle them off and not even really think twice about it. And then, I've had times where people are like, I don't know what you just said. That's like, my bad. Okay, sorry about that. And so if you're going to listen to this podcast, which I hope you do, and you really want to dive deep into the safety world and even into the trucking world, a lot of these are going to be very common terms that you're going to hear that you're going to want to know what they stand for. So I've written a bunch of them out. And I think we're just going to go through them here and kind of let you know what they are and why you should pay attention to them and things like that. So first one might seem obvious, but it might not be. And I apologize if I'm talking down to you because you're like, yeah, we know this already. Well, I apologize. I just want to make sure we got all of our bases covered so that going forward, you're not going to be like, wait a minute, I don't know that one. And you said you were going to tell me what they were, and now you're calling me a liar, and then we have an issue, and then you stop listening to the podcast, you file a complaint, the FCC comes in, they shut me down, I end up going to jail for lying, and for some reason, treason all of a sudden, and now I'm in jail for life because I forgot to mention a pretty obvious, is it acronym? Is that the word I'm looking for? Acronym? I think that's what I'm looking for. Got it. So abbreviation, acronym. I might have to Google that one before we're done just to make sure I'm using the right word. I think that's right though. But anyway, so I just want to kind of go over a couple of these because there are ones I use a ton. There's ones a lot of trucking people use a ton, and you're going to hear them a lot. And I don't want to have to explain, through that when I'm, in the zone and firing off a bunch of cool, hot information for you. So anyways, first one, DOT, Department of Transportation. If you're in trucking, you should really probably know this one, but Department of Transportation, that's easy. That is the whole government entity that's over the trucking world and the bus world and all that kind of stuff. They're the big guys that we all kind of have to, listen to, I guess. I don't know. But now we got that Chevron thing that just came out, so do we have to listen to them? I don't know. That's for way down the line. But DOT, Department of Transportation, they're the government entity that oversees all transportation stuff. So they're a big one. Now, the other one, FMCSA. That's a big one in the safety world. That stands for Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, okay? They are the ones that the DOT has basically said to regulate the trucking industry. And, okay, so let me just pause here real quick, too, for safety people listening. Because here's the deal with safety people, as I found out. We like to be extremely technical because a lot of safety guys come from like legal backgrounds, and in legal backgrounds, everything is super technical. You got to make sure that your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, and even make sure your lowercase J's are dotted because they will grab you on that. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. There's a lot of things in safety that need to have that pay attention to. If you heard in episode 1, I come from more of an operations background. We're a little more loosey-goosey, okay? And so some of my definitions that I'm going to tell you might be a little more broad than maybe the whole legal sense of them are. So if for all my safety people listening, if you have issues with the way I'm explaining this stuff, just keep them to yourself, okay? Unless there's something blatantly wrong, then you can tell me. But, there's probably a little more deep dive we could get into. And hear me when I say this, we're going to deep dive into some of this stuff. Not today, though, because if you remember on episode 1, I said we're going to keep things short, okay? I could talk about safety for a really long time, but you won't listen. So we want to keep things short and concise. So some of these we will deep dive into in later podcasts. In fact, I already have numerous podcasts written up that we're going to jump into some of these. But today's not the day. Today I just want to give you what they mean, what the abbreviations are, or the acronyms. I think that's still the right word. And then we'll go from there. So the FMCSA is what the DOT is set up to regulate and provide oversight for safety in trucking, for what we call CMVs, commercial motor vehicles, and for buses. Now, I will say I have never done safety for buses, passenger buses, coach lines, things like that. They're still regulated under the FMCSA as well. I just have no clue about how to do it. I mean, I know some things, like I know when it becomes a commercial motor vehicle when you have like 8 passengers or more, but that's about it. They got some different rules, and I've never been in a position that I've had to learn those rules, and so quite frankly, I haven't. So I know there's some really knowledgeable people in safety when it comes to buses and passenger carrying vehicles. Those are the people you should talk to about that. But the FMCSA overlooks all that. Now, here comes kind of a little more complicated one in a way that you think it means one thing, but it really actually doesn't. CSA. So we had the FMCSA, so we have now the CSA, which I'm sure you're probably thinking, well, Commercial Safety Administration. Nope, not even close. Not even close. So CSA is the compliance, it stands for Compliance and Safety and Accountability, okay? I even sometimes have to look that one up. I got notes down here. I had to look that one. I have to kind of remind myself because it should just mean Carrier Safety Administration. That's what my mind automatically goes to, but it's not. It's compliance, safety, and accountability. So what CSA is that is basically the program that the FMCSA has set up to enforce their safety overview. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard CSA scores. What's your CSA score? All that kind of stuff. And I've said, if you followed me for anything, you know that I say it's not an actual score, it's a percentage. And that's one of the other things we're going to get into later on. We're not going to get into that. But the CSA score and how the CSA does all that, it's kind of a longer process that we'll get into. But CSA is basically the program that the FMCSA has put in place to monitor safety when it comes to trucking companies and buses and things like that. Does that make sense? And if some of this stuff isn't making sense, by all means, reach out to me, okay? Sam@wattsman.com. I'll flash it on the screen here later on. You can reach out to me. I can help you out with any of that. Now, let's move on to something that's called SMS, and that is the Safety Measurement System. So this is one of the systems in the CSA. So this is how the FMCSA determines how safe a company is. They run you through their SMS, their safety management or safety measurement system. See, sometimes it even gets complicated for guys like us. And this is a system that they've put in place. This is kind of where the basics come into, which again, we're going to get into that. But the SMS gets all their data from roadside inspections and crash reports and things like that. Again, another thing we'll get into. Don't worry, we'll get into that. But the SMS, the Safety Measurement System, this is the program that's in place by the CSA, by the FMCSA. It kind of trickles down. But yeah, this is another. This is just kind of a way that they can see how safe a trucking company is. And then, like I said, basics. Okay, that's where that kind of comes into. There's 7 basics categories, and again, this is one that will probably be like a 2-part podcast because there's so much there. But basics, it stands for this, and I had to write this one down to read it because it's a long acronym. I think that's the word, acronym. It stands for Behavioral Analysis and Safety Improvement Categories. Okay, Behavioral Analysis and Safety Improvement Categories. Basic. That's where they get that from. And like I said, there's 7 categories in that. And like I said, we're going to break all of them down because each category, there's violations in each categories. And once you start going over the threshold on those, then that's when you get into trouble. And they get all that information from roadside inspections. And yeah, there's a whole system there. And again, we'll dive into that later. But just know basics, okay? Now, here's one that's a little confusing because you're like, it feels like we already have that, but we don't. But this one is called the CVSA, okay? CVSA, okay? Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance. And you might be thinking, that kind of sounds like the FMCSA. Well, you're kind of right. But this is actually a nonprofit, and their goal is to train officers on how to conduct roadside inspections. That's basically what they do. They train and they certify officers when they do the roadside inspections. If you have seen roadside inspections, you'll know that you have level 1s, level 2s, level 3s. I think it goes down to 4 and 5. Then is there 6 and 7? I can't remember. Those are pretty rare. You're most likely going to see 1s, 2s, and 3s. Okay, 1s being the full, they'll get under your truck and trailer, look at stuff. 2s are the walk-arounds, and then 3s are just looking at the driver logs, basically. But the CVSA is the program or the group that trains them on how to do that kind of stuff. And you'll hear, like, if you've been in trucking, you've heard of the CVSA Blitz Weeks. You know, they are concentrating on other things. Those are the people who are putting this thing on. And so inspection officers are out there during the CVSA Blitz Weeks looking for certain things. In fact, there's one coming up here. In fact, we might be in it right now, depending on when I publish this podcast. I think we're in one right now for distracted driving and things like that. So CVSA, Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, kind of like the FMCSA, but they're the ones that train the guys on how to do the safety stuff. Is this all making sense? Are you getting it? I hope you are, because we're going to keep going. CMV, like I said before, CMV, Commercial Motor Vehicle, okay? That's for trucks and buses. Now, there's a lot of ways. There's different categories what qualifies a vehicle to be a CMV versus a non-CMV. Again, later podcast, we'll get into all of that, because there might be times where, like, I'm kind of pulling a big pickup truck. Does this count as a CMV? It might, so we'll get into that and what you need to have in place for when you do when you do need, like, the DOT numbers, stuff like that. That'll be long down the road here. Okay, OOS, I think that's how you pronounce it. OOS. See, I'm Norwegian and I'm from Minnesota originally, so we like to do the long O's. Okay, we're not as, we're O's. So, anyways, OOS, out of service. Okay, you don't want this. If you get a roadside inspection and you get put out of service, that means your driver just got shut down because he had bad violations. Don't want that. Okay, plus that reflects badly on your inspections. They automatically get to add 2 points to your inspection number, and you're saying, what's an inspection number? We'll get to that. Okay, we're just getting to that. So OOS, out of service, you don't want that. HOS, hours of service. That's what it stands for. So this is your e-logs, okay? This is how drivers keep track of all their stuff. They have their HOS, hours of service. Big deal in the safety world. Want to make sure those are correct, okay? You don't want violations on your HOS. GVW, or GV dubs, as we like to call it. I don't know who calls it. No one calls it that. GVW, gross vehicle weight. Okay, this is what pretty much determines if you're driving a commercial motor vehicle. Okay, gross vehicle weight. There's kind of two different categories, I guess you can call it, in GVW, gross vehicle weight. A lot of people kind of get them confused. Gross vehicle weight is how much weight is on the truck when it's loaded, and then there's a thing called unladen weight, which is how much the vehicle weighs when it's empty. So you really don't need to know that too much, other than sometimes you have to, like, if you do registrations and stuff like that with the state, they want to know the unladen weight because they're just nosy like that. But anyways, GVW, gross vehicle weight. Maybe I'm going to start a trend by just calling it GV dubs. Maybe that'll catch on. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, and then last one before we wrap up episode 2 of our trucking safety podcast is ISS. That is, of course, the International Space Station. Just kidding. That is not. IIS, Inspection Selection System. Do you ever feel like sometimes your trucks are getting picked on at weigh scales and they're always getting pulled around? Chances are you actually might be getting picked on at the weigh scales, and that's because your ISS score is super high. And what is that? It's the Inspection Selection System. So if you're doing pretty good on your roadside inspections, your ISS score should be pretty low. However, if you're not doing so good on your roadside inspections, your ISS score is going to be pretty high. And I know the safety guys will correct me on this, but I believe it's like 50 to 0 is good. You're pass, you can go on. I think it's 51 to 74. 74, 75. You're kind of in this, hey, we could look at you if we want to. And then 75 and above is you're going to get pulled around. You don't want to do that, okay? That just slows you down. That eats up time. It's not good. So keep your ISS scores low. How do you do that? You have to tune into a later podcast because we're going to talk about all that kind of stuff too. So anyways, that's all I got. There are some more acronyms. Again, I think that's the word. There are some more acronyms that we use, and if we come to that, I'll explain those to you. But these are kind of the big ones, okay? If you understand what I'm saying with these, you're going to understand safety. So anyways, that is it. If you do have questions about any of this, sam@watsman.com is my email address. You can reach out to me or leave a comment below, and we can go from there. Again, safety guys, if I didn't get so technical on this, don't worry about it, okay? This is a broad overview. And anyway, so that is it. Episode 2. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Stick around. We're going to have episode 3 coming out pretty soon where we're going to dive into some of this. See you then.